Tonight, supply chain snarl with inflation at an all-time high and Thanksgiving a week away.
This is not a silver bullet situation. It's more silver buckshot.
And the White House suspends its vaccine mandate as the U.S. buys up 10 million doses of an antiviral drug to treat COVID-19, as the FDA considers booster shots for all.
I've been waiting for a long time to get a booster.
Plus, boycotting Beijing.
I just can't imagine seeing the American flag flying there.
Standing up to China for its human rights abuses ahead of the 2022 Olympic Games. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The holidays just about here, along with the higher price tags. Good evening, I'm Jenna Browder. We are looking at a growing consumer crisis in America. Gift shipments in limbo as ships struggle to make it to ports. Rising grocery costs, driving up prices at stores, all of it piling up for consumers. So with Thanksgiving just a week away, what does it mean for you at home? Brody Carter has our top story.
From Thanksgiving turkey to holiday travel to Christmas gifts, this holiday season is marking up to be one of the most expensive in nearly 3 decades. Continued backups at our nation's ports remain a major source of inflation and shortages nationwide. While issues at the LA Long Beach port complex slowly unravel, it's not fast enough. 84 ships are currently waiting to unload.
You've never seen 6 containers stacked high. You've never seen sites like you're seeing here.
The California complex has removed 32% of the containers that had been waiting by hiring younger truckers and running operations 24/7. The president's long-term infrastructure plan will invest $17 billion toward improving ports. Still, it won't come in time to save the holidays.
I heard somebody say this is not a silver bullet situation. It's more silver buckshot, a lot of different things that can be deployed at the same time.
Now, consumers are paying the price with this year's Thanksgiving dinner rising twice as fast as consumer wages. The cost of turkey alone jumped 21%, and a family of 10 can expect to pay 8% for the big meal. Some may have to forego traditional meals altogether due to the shortages.
I know here in the Midwest there appears to be a shortage of small to mid-sized turkeys. There's a shortage of containers, glass containers. So it might mean that there's actually enough gravy produced, but it might be difficult to get it jarred and into a store.
Experts expect the shipping crisis to double as families send holiday gifts across the globe. Retail sales increased in October, with 20% of shoppers overbuying gifts to account for supply chain issues.
Retailers are expecting November and December sales to be up about 10%. And that means that families are going to be spending on average about $1,500. That is a lot in the family budget, and it's going to be an expensive holiday ahead.
Leaders of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement met for the first time today since 2016. Mr. Biden announcing plans to hopefully speed up vaccine distribution, ease pressure on the supply chain, and also combat climate change. I'm Brody Carter, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Brody. Well, the jobless rate in America is falling for the 7th straight week. This week's jobs report showing weekly claims at a new pandemic low of 268,000. Unemployment claims last week dipping by another 1,000 from the previous week. The 4-week jobless claims average also hit a new pandemic low, just below 273,000. And joining us now is Greg McBride, Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Analyst for Bankrate. Greg, welcome. It's good to see you this evening. So jobless claims continue to go down. How do you read these latest numbers?
It was modest improvement, but improvement nonetheless. And as you noted, 7 consecutive weeks of declines, the lowest that we've seen in this pandemic era, and inching our way closer to those levels in the low 200,000s that we had been prior to the pandemic in the early part of 2020.
Yeah. Fewer people are filing for unemployment, but how many of those people are, people who are simply quitting, looking for work, and leaving the workforce altogether?
The rate of job quits is at a record high. But we're not seeing that translate into people dropping out of the labor force like we had seen in the early stages of the pandemic. Instead, when people are quitting jobs overwhelmingly, it's to pursue greener pastures. They're finding another job elsewhere. We found that particularly to be the case among younger workers. Younger workers were far more likely to have secured their pay increase in the last 12 months by changing jobs as opposed to staying with their current employer.
So today, the average price for gas was $3.41 a gallon. That is up from $2.12 this same day last year. So obviously, drivers it's more expensive to drive these days. But gas prices, of course, affect a lot more than just gas, gasoline at the pump, including home heating costs. Greg, how should Americans prepare for what appears to be a pretty expensive winter ahead?
It is, and there's really not a whole lot of places to hide because the inflation is really pervasive. Even when we strip out food and energy, even core prices, as they're called, are at a 30-year high. So it's really in every category of spending. And so, that's why you, I think, have to adopt some strategies. If you're a homeowner and you haven't refinanced your mortgage, here's a good opportunity to do so and cut your monthly payment by $150, $200 a month. That frees up a lot of valuable breathing room. But then take advantage of things like loyalty clubs, cash in those credit card and cashback rewards. How about that stash of gift cards you've had sitting around the house for a while? That can defray some out-of-pocket cash expenses. The problem with a lot of households are facing is that costs are going up month in, month out. Their pay isn't. The pay may go up once, maybe twice a year. And so you're constantly in this struggle of how do I stretch the same number of dollars I had last month that much further, given that costs are now higher than they were a month ago.
Yeah. We know Thanksgiving, Christmas is going to be more expensive this year. But Greg, when do you foresee things getting any better?
Well, I think the supply chain issues are going to be with us for much of 2022. And I think with that, a lot of the inflation figures that we've seen. That's just not one of those situations where we can wave a magic wand and it all gets better overnight. As we've seen, it's a very convoluted and involved process with multiple bottlenecks. And that's just going to take time to work itself out. And so I think, getting used to that, I think, is one thing. The other thing is I think the inflation numbers will start to look a little bit better once we get to the second half of 2022, because the year-over-year comparisons won't be against those really low levels that we had in 2020 in the early stages of the pandemic. But, we got to get there first, right? That's probably a good 7 or 8 months away.
Yeah. All right. Greg McBride with Bankrate. Good to see you. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
Well, here we go again, just in time for winter. COVID cases inching up. This as the brakes are put on President Biden's vaccine mandate for larger businesses. Senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon has the details.
After attorneys general in 26 states, joined by numerous businesses and organizations, sued to stop President Biden's vaccine mandate on businesses, a federal appeals court has blocked it, granting a victory to Americans who argue the order violates their constitutional rights.
No one should be forced to take a medical treatment just to keep their job.
The rule issued by OSHA covers some 2/3 of the workforce by requiring employees at larger businesses to get vaccinated or tested regularly. Companies in violation can face fines reaching more than $10,000 per infraction. The administration saying it remains confident in its authority to protect workers in emergencies. The fight likely headed to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, daily coronavirus cases are up by more than 12% since the beginning of November.
We are seeing an increase in emergency department visits among adults aged 65 and older, which are now again higher than they are for younger age groups.
Some experts suggest we're at the beginning of a new winter surge, and as the holidays approach, some Americans are eager to get a booster shot.
I've been waiting for a long time to get a booster. I wanted to do it before I was traveling, and I can't get an appointment until like December.
Any moment now, the FDA is expected to authorize boosters for all adults 18 and older. And while some disease experts argue much of the population now has some level of immunity, Dr. Anthony Fauci warns the country should ramp up new vaccinations and booster shots.
When you have a virus as transmissible as Delta, in the context of waning immunity, that dynamic is going to negatively impact even the vaccinated people. So it's a double whammy.
And many states are bypassing federal guidelines and already offering boosters to most adults who want them. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Thank you, Jennifer. And joining me now, CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson. So, Lori, this week, COVID cases about 14% over last week. Is this the start of a winter surge?
Well, healthcare workers are definitely preparing for that, Jenna, unfortunately. But, you know, we see this every winter. We see communicable diseases, that is, diseases that are passed person to person, rise every winter. Usually it's the flu, but of course this year and last year we were dealing with COVID. Last Christmas, last holiday season, spurred the largest surge, the deadliest surge that we saw the entire pandemic. There were a number of days in January of this year, several days in fact, where we had more than 4,000 deaths every day in the United States. For some comparison, we're averaging a little bit over 1,000 deaths right now. Of course, last year we didn't have vaccines. So that's one of the big differences between last holiday season and this holiday season. Although there are still a lot of people who aren't vaccinated. And this year, we're dealing with a much, much more contagious strain of the virus. So last Christmas, COVID wasn't nearly as contagious as it is this year. And also, you know, with these vaccinated people, a lot of their immunity has really plummeted. You know, some of the surveys show that the vaccination protection can get down into even in the 40% range. So people who were vaccinated more than 6 months ago might not have the protection that they thought they did have. So it'll be interesting to see you know, if vaccinated people are also getting COVID this holiday season. And then also the big wild card is people who have already gotten COVID and recovered from it. What's their immunity?
Right, right. Yeah, Lori, you know, Thanksgiving just a week away. What should this rise in cases mean for Americans who plan to celebrate and get together with people next week?
Well, I'm going to LA to see my daughter, and Los Angeles, California is one of those states where they're offering boosters to anyone over 60, anyone under age 65, no questions asked. And so she said to me, Mom, I don't want to get you sick. So I got my booster, and I said to her, well, I don't want you to get sick either. So I got my booster. My mother, I'm going to be seeing her over the holidays, and she has a number of comorbidities. So she has gotten her booster. So that's really what doctors recommend is if you're vaccinated, get your booster. And if you're unvaccinated, go ahead and get that first jab. That's the best form of protection. And then, of course, we already know the other mitigation methods.
Yeah. Today, President Biden announced the U.S. will purchase 10 million treatment courses of the Pfizer antiviral COVID pill. Lori, what does this drug do?
Well, this is an antiviral pill, as you pointed out. And so people who are familiar with Tamiflu, this antiviral pill is to COVID what Tamiflu is to the flu. So basically, you go to the doctor if you're feeling symptoms, and he or she gives you a pill, and you go home and take it, and it basically blocks the virus from replicating in your body. So it's fantastic. I hope that it's going to be approved and available to patients in time to meet this winter demand. And the big catch, Jenna, is you have to start taking it as soon after symptoms as possible, ideally within a day or two after the onset of symptoms. So if you aren't feeling well, go to the doctor right away.
Yeah, it's urgent. All right, Lori Johnson, thank you so much. Good to see you, Lori.
You too.
Well, the clock is ticking till the U.S. reaches its debt limit. What action might lawmakers take? That story when Faith Nation returns. Pastor Matt Hagee is apologizing for allowing his church to host a Reawaken America tour event in San Antonio last week. We reported on the event last night. It included chants of Let's Go Brandon and former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn calling for one religion in the U.S. Well, today, Pastor Hagee issued a statement saying it wasn't appropriate to allow the tour to take place at Cornerstone Church, adding, quote, I deeply regret and ask for forgiveness for what took place in the Cornerstone Sanctuary as a result of my oversight. All right, in just about a month's time, the United States could be unable to pay its bills. That's the new warning from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. It comes as the country nears the debt ceiling. Last month, lawmakers agreed to raise the debt limit by $480 billion. But the Treasury Department says that only keeps the country going until mid-December. Now leaders on Capitol Hill are again debating what to do. Abigail Robertson has the latest from Capitol Hill.
That's right, Jenna. December 15th is the new estimated date that the U.S. will reach the debt limit if Congress doesn't act. And they also need to fund the government by December 3rd to avoid a government shutdown. Republican Congresswoman Kathy McMorris Rodgers argues Democrats need to stop trying to spend more money and focus on these two issues.
We have record inflation, 30-year high inflation. We're seeing increasing gas prices, energy costs. We're heading into winter. Natural gas prices are expected to go up 30%, and then in addition, there's a natural gas tax that's included in these plans. This is hurting American families. And so I am working hard to raise awareness and encourage the majority not to pass these bills, We need to keep the government funded, but we do not need to be continuing to spend in this reckless manner that is actually going to hurt Americans.
If the U.S. were to default, Moody Analytics says it would be bad. Every area of federal spending would be affected. Paychecks to our military would stop, along with payments to suppliers, and other government checks and spending would stop too, including $20 billion in Social Security payments to seniors, and retirement funds could also take a hit. Republicans have said since the summer that they will not help Democrats raise the debt ceiling, and they are encouraging the party in power to go about it alone through the budget reconciliation process. Jenna?
All right, Abigail Robertson on Capitol Hill, thank you. The push to boycott the upcoming Winter Olympics. Up next, why some say the U.S. should sit out the Beijing Games. Welcome back. Well, will the U.S. take part in a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Olympics? With less than 3 months to go before the Winter Games, the Washington Post reporting the White House is leaning towards not sending any government officials, saying a final decision is expected before the end of the month. But today, Republican Senator Tom Cotton said a diplomatic boycott doesn't go far enough.
This is the least, the absolute bare minimum that any civilized nation would do for these genocide Olympics. I'm here today to call on the Biden administration to mount a complete and total boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics. No athletes, no administration officials, no corporate sponsors.
And Senator Cotton isn't the only one speaking out against the Beijing Games. So are many human rights activists. Caitlin Burke has the story.
Before the 2008 Olympic Games, China pledged to improve its human rights record. But the Communist Party reversed course, intensifying repression.
They realized they had gotten everything that they wanted, which was the approval of other countries.
More than a decade later, the situation is so bad there that China expert and author Gordon Chang says it's hard to fully conceive.
China's crimes against humanity, including genocide, are comparable to what the Third Reich did prior to the mass exterminations that began in 1941. These are atrocities that the world has not seen for decades.
There's over 1 million Muslim Uyghurs in concentration camps as we speak. The women are partitioned off when they get there and forced into forced abortions, forced sterilization, mass rape campaigns. It's horrific and disgusting. Add that to what's happened in the complete erasure over years of the Tibetan Buddhist culture. The Chinese Communist Party is in an absolute war with any type of religious liberty.
Several lawmakers, including Representative Mike Waltz, have pushed the International Olympic Committee for years to move the upcoming games out of China. Seeing little to no progress, they're now calling for a boycott.
I just can't imagine seeing the American flag flying there because essentially to President Xi, who's a dictator, it'll be the entire world shrugging their shoulders, turning a blind eye, and saying essentially, tacitly, all of that is okay.
Waltz points to the past when we should have boycotted a host country and didn't.
1936 in Germany. People forget that Russia invaded Crimea just months after the 2014 Sochi Games. We've seen time after time that dictatorships are emboldened when the world turns a blind eye.
At a recent event dubbed the Genocide Games Rally, speakers representing China's persecuted people groups criticized rewarding the communist regime for its atrocities.
During my stay in the concentration camp, I was beaten, injured, and tortured by unbelievable methods. Here, I would call all the governments and athletes and our organization to boycott 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics.
Chang says it's also important for athletes to truly understand what they risk by competing in China, from surveillance.
This is a state that is determined to learn everything about anyone who is on Chinese soil,
to actually having their DNA collected.
China has a relentlessly determined effort to take the DNA of foreigners. This is ominous. We know that the Chinese military is working on new pathogens. They call it a new type of biological warfare of, quote, specific ethnic genetic attacks. In other words, pathogens that will leave the Chinese immune but sicken everybody else.
In Europe, a diplomatic boycott is being considered, meaning world leaders wouldn't attend, although businesses and athletes would still participate. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thank you, Caitlin. And still ahead, meet America's luckiest turkeys. Finally tonight, a time-honored Thanksgiving tradition will take place at the White House tomorrow. President Biden serving up a platter of pardons, which is lucky for two special turkeys heading to the White House. Meet peanut butter and jelly. The two birds from Indiana will meet the president Friday when he'll officially grant the annual Thanksgiving pardon to one of the pair. But not to worry, though only one will take the top spot, both turkeys will be spared from any Thanksgiving tables this year. After the pardon, both will return to their home state to live on a farm at Purdue University. And that does it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening.